Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across this great state of Michigan. How are you this week? What have you been up to since we last talked? Have you done anything fun? Or have you just been working? Are you in one of those parts of the northern lower where you're still just dealing with the effects, the impact of Mother Nature? I pray that by the time this show hits the air this weekend, that everybody's power's back on. But as I'm in the studio right now, midweek, that's not the case. So my thoughts and prayers are with you. The weather this spring, can you really even call it spring? A lot of people commenting here on a live stream I was doing here from the studio about how it feels like December or January. Yeah, as I look at the forecast, there is a little bit of a warming trend. There is one day coming up early next week that actually looks pretty nice. But boy, we're earning it this year, aren't we? By it, I mean nicer weather, springtime. Was it just last spring that by this time of year it felt like June? I think it was. I think it was just last year. Isn't it interesting how I talked about this last week as well, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so fascinated by this outdoor lifestyle is that we don't have the ultimate control. We don't have the ultimate say. We don't, in today's digital, technologically astute world, as I'm sitting here in the radio studio, I press a button or I move my finger and my screens come to life or, immediate gratification. And it almost always works. So that kind of spoils that warps my frame of mind. I get used to doing something, getting an immediate response, having it be a positive response, positive reaction. And it's completely opposite when I go out hunting or fishing. I'm no longer in control. The weather is in control. The critters are in control. The fish are in control. And I think that's why I find that challenge so addicting. Now, I will be challenged next weekend already. I still can't get over the fact that turkey season starts next weekend. Next Saturday, my season. ZZ. It's what, April 19th to June 7th? That's a long, long time to take a bird, isn't it? It goes right through the mosquito season, as I call it, the May season, into June. I don't plan on turkey hunting that long. I will be out next weekend with my grandson, Trent. Trent's a hardcore hunter, but he's never been turkey hunting. My goal this season is to get him a bird. If I get him a bird, it's a successful season. You know what? No. Let me rephrase that. If I get out turkey hunting with my grandson, Trent, my 23-year-old grandson, who has expressed an interest to go turkey hunting with me, and we share that experience and don't even take a bird, it's still a success. Let's not get too hung up on harvesting something to make the experience valid. That's not what it comes down to, is it? That's just a bonus. If we catch a limit of fish, or if we shoot a bird, or we shoot a deer, we shoot a bear, that's a bonus. The bear meat we've been eating, the venison we've been eating, that's just a bonus. But it's the experience that is the experience. So just being out there with my grandson, Trent, that'll be my reward. And hopefully he finds that somewhat rewarding as well. When I think back to my turkey hunting I can't call it a career. I don't do it professionally. My turkey hunting passions. I haven't been turkey hunting all my life. We didn't have birds when I was a kid coming up on the west side of the state. I'm trying to think when my first turkey season was. I still had the TV show. I took my first bird with a shotgun. I think I took my first couple of birds with a shotgun. And then I thought, these birds, the way I hunt them, are right in front of you. They're coming into a decoy. They'd be a perfect target for a bow. So I started hunting them with my compound. Took several birds with a compound. And that's kind of a challenge. Because your range is limited. You got one shot. You got more movement. Now, keep in mind, though, when I turkey hunt, I don't do it the way some folks do. The old typical run and gun turkey hunting where you're out there with a shotgun, no blind. You call to a bird. You hear a bird. You move into a position where you can intercept that bird or call them in. You don't use a decoy for the most part. You're just sneaking through the woods and doing a run and gun and trying to call them in. That is one style of hunting. My preferred method of turkey hunting, or the one that I routinely use, and I do this because for so many years I had the TV show, and a lot of these were alone. I was out turkey hunting alone, and it just was a lot easier to sit in a blind with a video camera, a TV camera in the blind there with me, trained on the decoys, with some decoys in front of me, and just call. And it's more like deer hunting, except that you're talking to the birds, hopefully. So using that method of hunting, it really worked out well for a bow. Well, after I'd been doing that for several years, I thought, you know what? I want to up this level of difficulty and increase the challenge. And I switched over to a recurve. And I hunted with a recurve this season that I'm talking about. It's been, 10 years or so now, 10 years ago. I mean, I was hardcore. I was out there every day of the 10, 11, 12-day season, whatever it was. Every day with that recurve. I had so many close encounters. I missed a couple of birds. I had a couple of long birds come in right in my lap, and I missed them. Of course, I didn't get a second shot. It got to the point where at the end of the season, I was willing to shoot a jake. I called in a flock of jakes, and I missed the jake. So I got to the last day of the season. Now, honestly, I had been hunting every day of this season, every morning and often almost every afternoon. I was hunting on the same property. I was playing cat and mouse with them. It's a big piece of property, though, so I don't think I was burning them out, but I might have been educating them. Last night of the hunt, I'm sitting out there in a new spot, kind of on the edge of a swale or a little swamp. I hear some birds gobbling. I talk back to them, get a response. I think, okay, well, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen tonight, right? I ended up calling this flock in, and there was a ton of birds in it. I think there was 4 or 5 longbeards and probably 20 hens. And finally, I had the right bird give me the right shot, and I center punched him with a recurve. Now, it turns out that my camera was actually pointing at the wrong bird because there was 2 birds that came in. I put my camera on one of them, thought I was shooting that one, and I shot the other one, but I was still pretty proud of it. That's the only one I ever took with a recurve. And then I went back to a crossbow just because I wasn't spending the amount of time shooting a recurve that you need to be proficient. I hear people talk with reverence about a recurve, and I do as well. Traditional archers. But traditional archers owe it to the game they are pursuing to be proficient with that tool. It could be any tool, but in this case, we'll say a recurve or a longbow. Yes, it's cool to hunt with traditional archery tackle, but if you're no good with it, I don't think it's so cool anymore, right? I used to know a guy who had a pretty big name in the outdoor world, the outdoor world, and he shot a recurve, and he couldn't hit a 55-gallon drum, but he was out there with a recurve. Well, I didn't want to be that guy. So anyway, I digress. So I went to a crossbow, and that's the way I've been hunting turkeys for the last several years. And I like it. And I get grief every year from people saying, oh, well, you shot that bird with your cross gun. Oh, I just wish I was as cool as smart as these detractors who are online, who challenge everything you do but never go out and do it themselves. If we are to maintain this lifestyle, we need to get along. Maybe not even get along, but not publicly challenge each other and chastise each other. Now, I'm not talking about like that charter captain in Florida who took so much public ridicule and shame because he attacked that kid. Do a search on YouTube for Florida charter captain attacks young angler, and you'll see what I mean. Now, that guy deserves everything he got, no doubt about it. Hey, coming up on this week's show, Bryan Darland of Jay's Sporting Goods. He's the buyer for the fishing department of Jay's and also an avid expert angler. Talks about a variety of springtime fishing opportunities, plus the cool new gear that's on the shelves at Jay's. In hour number 2, Captain Pete Patsalis of Hook One Charters in Marine City talks about trolling for silverfish on the St. Clair River, primarily Atlantics. Then Kevin Frailey of the DNR, he's been around the outdoor scene forever, talks about education. Part of that department's goal is to educate people. And then in hour number 3, noted outdoor writer and newest inductee into the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame, Richard P. Smith. All that, plus wild game chef Dixie Dave Minar and more. My name is Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe, WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette, WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins, Michigan-based, family-owned VersaSkins. There's two things right there you know I love, right? Michigan-based and family-owned. VersaSkins owner Paul Perrone came up with a great concept a few years ago, and he's working hard to get the name out there. But the concept is just change your skin for the season you're in. Why buy a bunch of different sets of expensive hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set and then snap on and zip on an outer shell of a different camo pattern in less than a minute? You can go from snow camo to blaze orange to waterfall to whatever it is you want. And listen, the way the weather is right now, probably be cold enough during turkey season as well. Check out their website, versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. By the way, if you need big sizes, 4, 5, 6X, VersaSkins can help you there. Or if you're a saddle hunter, VersaSkins makes jackets specifically for saddle hunters. Two websites to check out, versaskins.com, versaskins.com, and then go to amazon.com and do a search for VersaSkins brand. VersaSkins, just change your skin for the season you're in. Now, I talked about Michigan-based, family-owned. Those two terms right there. If I threw in one more, outdoor superstore. Michigan-based, family-owned, outdoor superstore. To my mind, that's Jay's Sporting Goods. Jay's Sporting Goods, the first company that showed confidence in me and showed faith in me and said, you can do this. When I had the opportunity to leave, a local TV station I was working for and go out and do this on my own full time. And I went to Jay's and I said, I don't know if I can do this. And they said, you can do this. You can, and we will help you. We will support you financially and mentally as well. And so ever since then, and that's been a long time now, I have been extremely loyal to the folks at Jay's Sporting Goods. Jay's Sporting Goods started out in Clair, in the home of Jay Poet, hence the name Jay's Sporting Goods. By the way, there's a very, very good, I think, video on YouTube on the Jay Sporting Goods website and YouTube channel that tells this whole story. Jay started out in the house in Clair, then they moved to the blue building in town, which old-timers know what I'm talking about, and then they took a leap of faith and they moved to a hayfield a mile north of town. People flocked to that. Years later, they took over an abandoned Kmart in Gaylord, put a Jay Sporting Goods there. Now every city that has an abandoned Kmart thinks they should have a Jay's Sporting Goods. Bryan Darland has worked at Jay's for a long time. One of my best stories about Bryan is when my dad was still around, he was looking for a very, very specific fishing rod for bluegill fishing. Bryan was in the fishing department at the time. My dad made the drive up from Grand Rapids to Jay's. He ran into Bryan. They had a conversation. Bryan said, "Here's the rod you want." My dad took that thing out and he said it's the best bluegill rod he ever had. And for years he talked about Jay's Sporting Goods, their customer service, and Bryan Darland. Well, Bryan has worked his way up the ranks, and now he's the fishing department buyer, and he's with us on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Bryan, welcome back. How have you been?
I've been well. How about yourself, Mike?
I'm great. When you hear those old stories about Jay's and know how long you've been involved in the company, what's that like? Is it a sense of pride to know that you have been working with this family and this company for this many years?
No, of course it is. I mean, every time you hear that, it's always something near and dear to your heart. You know, you try to do the best you can, and and the family's just terrific. The Poet family is absolutely terrific to work for. They really are family. Even though we're not blood related, it sure does feel like you're one of them.
So, how did you get to where you are, Bryan? Walk me through the steps that they got you to where you are today.
Well, I couldn't stand making Subway sandwiches anymore, so I figured I'd apply at Jay's Sporting Goods and see if I could get in. Had a friend that was working here who gave a good name for me at the ripe age of 19, and thanks to Freddie back in the day, and got into the store and kind of from there on went from that to the fishing department manager, and then went from the fishing manager up into the Clair store manager for a little while, and then the fishing buyer spot opened up, and I said, you know what, that's kind of got my name all over it, I feel like. So took a leap into that area, and here we are going on 22 years in about a month or so.
Well, congrats. Fishing department buyer, why did that appeal to you? Explain to me what that means.
Well, fishing's always been a very big passion of mine ever since I was a little kid. I used to beg Grandma to go out in the little 14-foot John boat on the local lake, and we'd go out pan fishing, we'd do whatever else, and she'd put that big old white cake of zinc on her nose, and then we'd go out and we'd spend the entire day on the water. So ever since I was just a little kid, that was always a major passion. So and then working through the fishing ranks through here at the store, and then now being able to be the one that's a very big instigator as to what the store can carry, and trying to show success with that, and just the industry. The fishing industry is amazing. It's very small, it's very comforting, but it is amazing. So I do it's just a passion of mine.
So you allude to this, but I think you don't give yourself enough credit. You, Bryan Darland, are basically the guy who decides what fishing products end up on the shelves at Jay's.
Yeah, I mean that's for the most part. We have a great backbone of folks that we work with. Industry folks as well as internally. We have some great people within our both of our stores, within the fishing departments at both locations, and we're always messaging back and forth on new things that we see, and it's a big communal effort for sure. I have Travis right close here, which I know you've spoken to in the past. I have Nick as well, and Joe up in Gaylord, John up in Gaylord, Kenny up in Gaylord. I mean, there's just countless names between the whole, within our Jay's family as well as within the industry that we're always bouncing things back and forth. So it's really a big effort between all of us.
When I texted you yesterday, you had a rep in the office. I know you've got a meeting with a rep this afternoon. At this point, what is it like? I know Jay's isn't a national chain, but you're nationally known. Do folks come to you at this point? Is it just a matter of you sitting back and sorting through the things that people bring to you, the products they bring to you?
I mean, that's a big portion of it, but there are other products out there, especially the new up-and-comer brands and, things that you hear about that a lot of times we reach out to certain vendors if there's things that are popular. I mean, I have a new one that I just brought in recently that's shown extreme success, and I haven't even had them in the store for 30 days. So, and that particular company was one that I had had to reach out to, but they're very small, and I think in some cases, some of these companies, mentally they're like, we'll worry about our small shops first, and then they get a call from a J Sporting Goods, and they're like, oh man, hopefully I can keep up kind of mentality. So I think sometimes that's the case, and other times it's just everyone's time is valuable, and it makes it difficult to want to be able to reach out to everybody too.
I'm going to come back to that product you're talking about here in a minute because I'm very curious what that is. Sure. But how do you sort through? I mean, I don't know how many new products are brought to market every year, but there's a bunch of them. You get inundated by people saying, hey, pick me, I have the best. This is going to change the fishing world. How do you sort through that stuff and get those products that are going to be what your customers want?
Well, I mean, in some cases it's a guessing game, and in a lot of other cases you try and use those resources. You ask the questions from the manufacturers of, what kinds of things are you going to be pushing, and then as far as kind of what your market trend is. We have a lot of different market trends that we get a feel on. I can tell you that 10 years ago the market trend was totally different than what it is right now. So it's just a matter of trying to stay with those times and figure out exactly what we're going to want to invest into to try and get the best for our customers that come in the door.
Okay. How is the market trend different?
Well, I mean, the electronics world is totally different now than it was 10 years ago. I've been finding that more customers like to have, the best type of item they can afford versus quantity. I've been noticing the quality over quantity mentality seems to be a lot better. A lot bigger now than what it was a decade ago. People 10, 15, even 20 years ago, if I showed somebody a $100 fishing rod, I had a lot of people that kind of turned a side eye to me like, what are you thinking? Nowadays you show somebody a $100 rod and they're like, oh, that's nice. What else you got? And, then you're digging into $200 rods or $250 rods or, the reels, for instance. Back in the day, if you showed somebody a $60 reel, like that was pretty high end. There was the special customer that wanted a $100 Stratic. There was a special customer that wanted to get into some of the nicer dialas in the 100, 150. Nowadays it's really nothing to kind of scoff at a $100 reel, and guys are looking into 150, $200 reels on the regular. So
well, good. I'm glad I'm glad I'm not alone there, Bryan. All right, so tell me before we take our first break here, what's this product that you're having such good results with?
So there's a lot of folks that have been out there with the ice fishing world and they've heard the brand Summit Fishing. So Summit Fishing has been around a little while, and I'd kept hearing that name pop up, and there's a few other various brands that have been out there and that kind of thing, and this one just keeps popping up. And the thing that really made me topple over the edge on Summit Fishing was they have something of a new docking station, newish to us at least, of a docking station. What it allows is an ice fisherman that has their live scope unit on a portable pack, they can just snap it onto this docking station on their boat in the summertime and be able to use it, and then to unsnap it, move it from boat to boat, move it from ice fishing to summer fishing, all and be very versatile. So we've been on this company for less than 30 days, and I think I've already had 5 reorders. So wow, and they've been great. They've been amazing to deal with. So
where are they out of, Bryan?
They're down out of Ohio is where they're at. So, okay. But they're super easy to get a hold of. The family down there as well. It's a very small business. It's the gentleman that come up with it. He's got his daughter working for him as well as son-in-law there, and so they've been super easy to get a hold of. And once we kind of got communication going, that was awesome. And now I see that they're pulling on some pro staff that's also some folks that are very close to us too. So that's amazing.
Excellent. All right, Bryan, I got to take a break. When we come back, I've got one more question. We'll save this, save your answer till after the break. Would you rather deal with a small family-based company like that or the big corporate conglomerates? We'll ask you about that, Bryan, after the break and more as we talk with Bryan Darland, the buyer for the fishing department at Jay's Sporting Goods, the website jaysportinggoods.com. That's jaysportinggoods.com. A lot more questions for Bryan, including, I told you the way I set this up is the guy's a hardcore fisherman. Well, once we get the business side of this conversation out of the way, we're going to talk a little fishing, springtime fishing, what he likes, what he's hot on, what he's hearing is hot, and the gear for those activities coming up after the break. Right here as I continue the conversation with Bryan Darland of Jay's Sporting Goods, jaysportinggoods.com. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. And north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots, Michigan-based, family-owned. I come back to that, don't I? Michigan-based, family-owned. Now, depending on where you are in our state, you might be thinking about, getting started on this whole food plot planting process, or you might be thinking, Avery, you're crazy. It's going to be a few weeks yet. But regardless, the food plot planting season is coming up. I would strongly recommend that you think about dealing with this Michigan-based family-owned company called Killer Food Plots. Check them out online. The website is killerfoodplots.com, killerfoodplots.com. And we are resurrecting the Killer Food Plots podcast. When I'm done in the studio today, we will record the new podcast with the company owner, Rich Krazan. And by the time you hear this radio show, that podcast will be uploaded, so check it out. In the meantime, though, we're talking with Bryan Darland, who is the buyer for the fishing department at Jay's Sporting Goods. Bryan, before the break, I asked you this concept. Personally, I have found from my perspective, it is a much better partnership to deal with the smaller family-owned companies as opposed to the big corporate conglomerates. But I can see from your perspective, maybe with all the resources they bring and the marketing budget and everything behind the scenes, that they might be a better fit. What are your thoughts?
No, there's no comparison to to family owned and whatnot as opposed to big conglomerate corporate stuff. I mean, the family owned aspect of it allows you to have, you're not just a number. You know what I mean? So you can talk to somebody. You can actually go and converse. You can share issues that maybe you may be thinking of, benefits and struggles. You can be more impactful within the place that you're in. Working here at Jay's, it's nice to be able to take a walk up to the office and, spitball some ideas and be able to get something done and try and do what you can the best that you can quickly. You're not handcuffed by a lot of different ways that a lot of these big corporate places end up doing. So, I mean, a lot of the manufacturers we deal with, there's not a lot of, I take that back. There are a lot of small individual manufacturers, but there's a lot of other big conglomerates that are very difficult to deal with in times. And, so you're trying to go through the hoops and you're trying to make some phone calls and trying to get things done. Whereas the smaller mom and pop type of things, you can call them up and get a hold of the owner and you can just, hey, here's what I've got. And they tell you, yeah, no problem. And you get it taken care of and the phone call's over.
Yeah.
So
we're on the same page.
I'm a huge
there.
fan. I mean, I'm a very big advocate.
Yeah. What are you seeing? So you've got your finger on the pulse of fishing here in Michigan. As you look around the state, as you talk to folks, what's hot right now?
I mean, obviously the walleye thing is what's really rolling heavy at the moment. The fish that are up in the Tittabawassee are about done spawning. The Saginaw River, the lower part of the Saginaw River, is open year-round, so that fishery is still there. Water's a little muddy. Water, it makes fishing a little difficult there, but those fish are all pouring out into the bay. And so Saginaw Bay has been doing very well for the people that have been out there. I'm thinking that a casting bite is upon us out there as well. So that's going to be a thing very, very shortly. Otherwise the guys that go out there and troll around, troll planer boards and flicker shads, flicker minnows, we're still into bandit bites now because of the water temp. That's going to be a thing here for a little while yet too. So those guys are doing very well. Otherwise, Detroit River is rocking down there. Guys are catching a lot of fish. I just, speaking of Michigan-based stuff, I just got in some Mags custom rods here that are going to be very nice for that Detroit River jigging base, and we'll have those online for people that want to be able to buy them on the website that you mentioned earlier there too, Mike. So those will be on there, and otherwise pan fishing is coming up real fast. That's something very near and dear to my heart. You had mentioned turkey season. I know you're a big turkey hunter, but the first thing I think of when I think of turkey season is crappie fishing because they really fall the same time.
Nice.
So, I haven't had a turkey permit in probably 20 years, and I don't foresee myself having one anytime soon because it gets in the way of crappie fishing.
I can respect that completely, and I appreciate that. Bryan, you mentioned the website, jsportinggoods.com. Is everything that's available in the store also available on the website, or not to that extent?
It's not to that extent. I mean, our team is working extremely hard to try and get as much as they can on there. It's getting better and better by the day. We have an internal team that goes in and they plug these items in specifically, and as buyers, we try our best to give them heads up on different items that we're bringing in that are maybe new or hot or, things that are excited in the industry, for them to be able to get on there and, try and service the online customer as well. So, but we have a pile of SKUs, and for our team to be able to load them all on there is very difficult.
So, and I understand that completely, absolutely. Hey, there's nothing like a trip to Jay's anyway, right? Come on in and check it out and feel the things, touch them, put them in your hands, see what they look like. Test the action of them. It is a destination. And now, at least the Clair store, when you look at that new the Weber Center across the parking lot, what a cool addition that is.
That's an impressive piece over there. If you have not been in there, folks have not been in there, they absolutely need to make a trip. It is an absolute showpiece, and it's the story behind it's even more amazing.
We're talking with Bryan Darland, the fishing buyer for Jay's Sporting Goods, the website jaysportinggoods.com, jaysportinggoods.com. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we will wrap up our conversation with Bryan as we wrap up this opening hour of the show. He brought up crappies. I got to follow up on that. I told him my dad was a huge pan fisherman. He loved the service he got from Bryan when he was looking for a panfish rod years ago. So if that's one of Bryan's passions, we'll talk more about that after the break. When we go on into hour 2, we're going to talk to Captain Pete Patsalis of Hook One Charters about trolling for Atlantic salmon in the St. Clair River. How cool is that? You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Carroll on 2 stations, WIDL 92.1 FM and WKYO 1360 AM. You can hear us in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS, and you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on WKNW 1400. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach, things are rocking at Linwood Beach Marina right now. The boat launches are in. People are using them on a daily basis when Mother Nature allows, and hasn't been the case this spring so far for sure. If you want to get the boat ready for the water, Linwood Beach Marina can help you out. If you're looking for a campground for the summer, Linwood Beach Marina can help you out. If you're looking for advice on where to go fishing, how to catch those Saginaw Bay walleye, Linwood Beach Marina can help you out. And if you're looking for a new or used boat, Linwood Beach Marina can help you out. Great people, great location, great facilities. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. Right now, we're talking with Bryan Darland, who is the fishing department buyer for Jay's Sporting Goods, jaysportinggoods.com, jaysportinggoods.com. So, Bryan, given the Mother Nature's whims this spring, how long do you think it'll be before you're chasing your beloved crappies?
Oh, I think it's coming pretty quick, to be right honest with you. I mean, the thing about those crappies is you can get them right at ice out. They're in a very similar pattern to where they were in the wintertime. So those deeper weed edges and those kinds of things, you can still catch them out there doing that kind of thing. Even, right now the ice is fresh off on a lot of our local lakes here in mid-Michigan. But as spring progresses, those fish are going to begin their way in tighter and a little bit shallower. And that's when it gets to be really fun. So here in the next week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on the lake and depending on the bottom color, depending on the sun exposure, and obviously the weather we have coming up. I think I saw some 60s coming up here in a little bit.
I did see one day, yeah.
So that'll help a ton. That warms up that water, and then those fish begin, they kind of come in, and then they work around, and then eventually they spawn. So once you can kind of get them all grouped up, man, is it a lot of fun. I take little 1-inch fluke type baits, little minnow imitators, and it's hand-to-hand combat for the style of fishing that I like doing. I like getting them pinned in there. I cast in the middle of them, I twitch the baits back, I can watch them come up and swipe at it, pop them, and I can make pretty short work out of quite a few fish in a short amount of time, which that's an absolute ton of fun. So that's coming quick.
So is it is targeting crappies very similar to bluegill fishing, or is it two distinctly different activities in your mind?
You know, in my mind, you can make it very similar. You know, you can throw a minnow or a pinky jig or something like that underneath a float. You know, we use a lot of Berkeley gulp on small jig heads underneath a float. So very similar to what I would do, you know, pan fishing wise, bluegill fishing wise. Because with bluegills, you know, we may do the same thing, run a float, run a little jig head, and then maybe run like a Berkeley angleworm or, you know, or live worm or something of that nature, kind of on a very similar setup. But the way that I like crappie fishing, my favorite way is no float at all. And I'm casting, you know, between 2 and 4 pound test monofilament line. I like mono on my casting rods. I can actually get a little further on a mono than I can a lightweight braid because of the weight of the bait is just not heavy enough and it catches in the wind with braid. So the mono tends to kind of coil off the reel a little better and give me a little bit further cast. And so then I take those, you know, pitch them out there and I kind of twitch them back in a lot of cases. So, and small jig heads, you know, with little swim baits, we cast those out too, or even like a little, you know, little pins minnow or small X-wraps or something of that nature. Very hand-to-hand type combat. I'd say it's closer to pitch and jerk baits for bass. Is kind of what I more envision it like.
You mentioned Berkeley gulp. That's a scented plastic bait. Is there any reason, in your opinion, these days to use live bait, or have the scented plastics pretty much taken over?
You know, there's a lot of days where live bait can outperform a lot of these plastics, but there sure are a lot of days where I'll outperform live bait because you're not constantly digging in the bucket for live minnows. You're not digging in the pail for, you know, some more worms or more crawlers or, you know, wax worms or something of that nature. You're not taking the time to rebait each hook with each fish. You know, with these plastics, a lot of times we can get multiple fish on the same thing, and when these fish are fired up, I think plastics are the way to go.
All right, as we wrap up our conversation, Bryan, tell us, you know, are you fully stocked at both stores these days? I mean, do you have everything the angler can want as he or she walks in the door?
You know, if somebody's headed on out, getting ready for spring, you know, there are a few brands still trickling in, especially like some big water trolling stuff and whatever else. I mean, some of those are still trickling in, but for the most part, when it comes to, you know, our inland lake and panfish and bass fishing, and you know, we've got a good stock of a bunch of walleye stuff as well. You know, for the most part, we're in really good shape on a lot of that stuff. So definitely, you know, if you can't catch a fish with what we've got on the sales floor, you know, probably need to fish a little harder.
Excellent, Bryan. You'll be seeing me here before too long. I've got to pick up a whole new set of walleye trolling rods, and you know that's going to be 10 rods, 12 rods, whatever it is. But I'm looking at those Romanak rods, the Starfire rods that I know you guys carry there at Jay's. So I'm gonna come in and check those out. Maybe I'll get a chance to say hi to you face to face.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Give me a call and let me know when you're popping through.
I will do that. Bryan Darland of Jay's Sporting Goods, just a really good guy and a very knowledgeable guy as well. He is the buyer for Jay's Sporting Goods fishing department, both the Clair and the Gaylord store. The website, jaysportinggoods.com. That's jaysportinggoods.com. Good people, great selection, great products. jaysportinggoods.com. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in our second hour, we're going to talk trolling for Atlantic salmon with Captain Pete Patsalis right here on Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction. And welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network, on more than 30 radio stations across our great state of Michigan, and I am so glad to have you along with us. As always, I will encourage you, if you can, to listen to the Outdoor Magazine radio show on your local radio station. Why is that, you say? Well, for one thing, I have a very strong alliance and appreciation for those broadcast stations. They have graciously allowed me to have access to their weekend airtime, which is a big deal. And so if you could support them, I would appreciate it. If you listen on your local radio station, you hear your local news, weather, sports, even your local commercials. Maybe there's an ad or a sale or something you want to take advantage of. Plus, to protect those broadcast partners, I don't upload the podcast version of the show until after the broadcast has aired. So your local radio station is the best way to get Outdoor Magazine radio if you can. Now, if your local station doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live, God forbid, in small part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, well, it's nice to know there is a podcast version of the show available. It's exactly the same content, just made, access to it other than your local radio station. So where do you hear the Outdoor Magazine podcast? Which is actually a very good question. You can hear it on my website. That website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's on my Facebook page as well. Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, now called X, LinkedIn, Apple Music, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, yada, yada. You know the gamut. You know all the names. You know all the players there. I also put it on YouTube. Although it is not a video podcast, it is strictly an audio podcast. I do put it on YouTube, and people consume the content there as well. I do like podcasting, though. And actually, just the other day, I thought, I'm toying with, in the back of my mind, launching another podcast that would be strictly a podcast, and it would be a video version of the podcast to be more in line with these podcasts that are out there these days. So we'll see. We'll see if the old guy decides he wants to jump more deeply into that pool or not. But in the meantime, I do podcasts for some of my advertising partners, including Offshore Tackle, Angler Quest Boats, QUEST, and we are rejuvenating the Killer Food Plots podcast. In fact, when we're done here in the studio recording the show, we're going to record this new version of the Killer Food Plots podcast, and by the time you hear this radio show, you will be able to hear that. So make sure you check that out. As I was talking about the video podcasts that are out there these days, I immediately thought of the Hook One podcast because Pete Patsalis of Hook One Charters is my opening guest this hour. Pete is a very interesting guy. In fact, John, let's just bring him in the phone line here now. Pete, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good, Mike. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. And what's going on in my world? I'm sitting here in a radio studio having the time of my life talking about the outdoors, hunting, fishing, and shooting and trapping. And as I talk to you, you're probably looking at the water, if not on the water, I suspect.
We are live from Lake Erie, Mike. We are trying to catch a big walleye.
Well, you should. Your odds of catching one there are pretty darn good, aren't they, Pete?
Yeah, the fishing here is incredible. We got a lot of post-spawn fish in the box right now, but it's been a good bite, so hopefully we can find one with some eggs.
Well, let's. I do want to talk about Lake Erie a little bit, but let's talk about you for a minute, Pete. And this is a question I've been asking a lot of people lately, just to get a better feel for our guest, better insight into our guest. How did you, Pete Patsalis, captain, get to where you are today? Because I know your story is an interesting one.
Yeah, so it started with the charter business that we opened in Marine City. So I was born and raised on the St. Clair River, and I started my charter business back in 2018. We did that for a little while, and then in 2021, we got the opportunity with a building that's right on the river to start a bait shop. So we started Hook One Bait and Tackle, and man, it's been a whirlwind from there. We're heading into year 5 right now. It's as busy as it's ever been. The fishing is finally starting to pick up. The spring was kind of weird to us, but now I've taken the charter business is almost taking a back seat as the bait shop business continues to get busier and busier for us.
I have never had the opportunity yet to walk into your bait shop, but I feel like it's the type of place that when you walk in there, you feel at home. It's a friendly atmosphere. It's kind of a gathering spot, yet you have all the tackle and gear you need.
Yeah, you're spot on, and you haven't stepped in yet. We're still working on that.
I know it. When I get
yeah,
out that direction, I will.
That's it, man. That's kind of what we wanted to build, was a spot where fishermen can come in. I mean, we've all got stories, but where they can come in, we can tell our stories, and then, we don't have a ton of space in the shop. So our goal was to really emphasize, really take care of our fishermen. And now we've kind of expanded to our smallmouth guys on Lake St. Clair and a lot of our trolling guys. But we're a heavy river shop. A lot of jigs, a lot of plastics, a lot of crawler harnesses, bottom bouncers, and all that stuff. And it's been a blessing, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, you concentrate on the river fishery because that's where the shop is. And again, as you look out the window, if you were back in the shop, that's what you would see. I mean, can't you actually access your shop by the water from a boat?
Yeah. So we're right upstream from the Marine City DNR launch. You can actually, I encourage people to come in by boat. We've got ladders right on the seawall, and we're actually right in the Bell River, so it's not super rough. You're not dealing with a lot of current. We get the freighters that come and they park right next door. We've got an aggregate yard next door, so we got the freighters and everything like that. But it's a perfect spot for fishermen. And, we talk about the river shop, but it's so much more just because we have so many species that swim through that river. So we've got to be ready for salmon. We've got to be ready for trout. We've got to be ready for walleye. We've got to be ready for smallmouth. We've got to be ready for perch, muskie. We kind of get to touch it all, so it's a blessing, but it's also a curse trying to keep the walls stocked.
Yeah. Well, it is cool that you've got such a multifaceted, multi-species fishery right out your back door there. What got my attention, and Pete, I don't remember if I saw that you were doing a seminar on this somewhere or what, but it was trolling for silverfish, and I'm thinking Atlantic salmon, in the river. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just got back from Ontario last night. I did a salmon seminar over there. We went and learned a little bit about their stocking and their hatchery program that they run on Lake Erie, which is incredible. We got to go through and see all the trout and salmon that they're getting ready to raise. But we did a seminar on trolling the river because our river gets fantastic populations of salmon. We get a lot of coho salmon that are starting right now, really. Cohos, Atlantic, steelhead. Every now and then you'll find a brown in there as well. But the opportunity for silverfish is right now, middle of April.
But the trolling, that's what got my attention. I usually think of river fishing as maybe, drifting and jigging with the current, drifting and, like you would fish for walleye downriver. What's the trolling about?
Yeah.
And didn't you, I'm not going to say you discovered it because people have been doing this for years, but you really kind of dialed that technique in, haven't you?
Yeah, it was funny because I was talking to a buddy, and I remember when we first started doing it, we were one of the only boats that were out there. And not to say that we're the ones that kind of pioneered it, but after the salmon crash in 2004, our king salmon, it took a long time to rebound, and it seems like the last 6-7 years it's really rebounded. And when we started trolling to simply cover water, right? It's the same reason we all troll, is to cover a lot of water. So we just use the current to our advantage. We're trolling about 4.5 miles, speed over ground. So if you look at your GPS, you're going about 4.5, which will put you about a 1.5 to 2 miles an hour faster than the current. And we're running a simple walleye spread for the most part. We're running a lot of spoons and snap weights. We're running a lot of flicker shads, flicker minnows, Berkeley money badgers, and just using that current to help us cover as much water as possible.
Okay, so are you, and you may have just said this, but you broke up a little bit or lost your signal a little bit. Are you trolling upstream or down, or does it matter?
Yeah, so we're trolling downstream because with the current, you don't want to be, you're putting too much pressure on your rods and your baits moving upstream. There's a few places where there's slack current that you can make an exception to the rule, but for the most part, we're going about 4 miles an hour SOG downstream. So
you're trolling downstream, you get to the end of your run or whatever, you'll just pull everything up and then run back up and do it again.
Exactly. Yep. And we'll usually crank it away in stretches of miles, right? So we're not doing these short drifts. We're going 5-6 miles.
Oh, okay.
Because the salmon are just running. A lot of the times, those salmon are just running in pods and schools up and down the break line chasing bait. So you're just trying to cover as much water as possible to try and get as many of these schools as possible. So they're in the river to eat.
That Atlantic is quite a fish too, isn't it?
The Atlantic fishing has been incredible, and from our past conversations with the DNR, they were worried it was going to be a project that failed, and it's actually been quite the opposite. Those Atlantics are thriving. They're doing really well in our river. We have fish that, they get up to 15, 16 pounds, and they put up just as good of a fight as a king does. They're acrobatic. They go on long runs. They're heavy fish, and they're very aggressive.
16-pound Atlantic in the river would be just an absolute riot. We're talking with Captain Pete Patsalis of Hook One Charters. His website, hookonecharters.com, hookonecharters.com. Check out his podcast and his social media post as well. Pete, we got to take a break here, so you got about 4 minutes to go catch a big fish, then we'll talk more, all right?
Sounds good.
Captain Pete Patsalis of Hook One Charters, who is actually on Lake Erie today as we are talking. He just got back from Ontario last night. He's on Lake Erie today, probably be on the St. Clair River tomorrow. The guy's all over the place. He's a fishing fool, and I mean that in the best sense possible. The website, hookonecharters.com, hookonecharters.com. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Houghton Lake on the Twister, 92.1 WTWS. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY, 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by... Do I even need to say any more? That's the sound of my Rapid River knife locking back open. I just pulled it out of my pocket. It's always there. Well, this or one of my growing number of Rapid River knives. These things are handmade by craftsmen in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. They are guaranteed for life. There is still time, very little time, to get involved in the Idaho Bear Hunt giveaway. If you go to rapidriverknifeworks.com, you can sign up there, rapidriverknifeworks.com. By the way, when you're at that website, you can take advantage of the new promo code Avery15 to save 15% off your order. Or better yet, go into their showroom on US 2, just east of Rapid River. You can see all the different knives, all the different displays, and you can use that Avery15 promo code there as well. Made by craftsmen, guaranteed for life, rapidriverknifeworks.com, promo code Avery15. It does not get any better than that. Well, maybe it does. If you were, say, trolling Lake Erie for big springtime walleye and talking about trolling the St. Clair River for salmon, maybe that would be better, because that's what Captain Pete Patsalis of Hook One Charters is doing right now. Pete, any fish during the break?
Nope, not yet. We're still waiting.
Oh, man. Usually when folks talk to me while they're on the water, it's good luck. So you will catch a big fish while we're talking. I'm going to just about guarantee it.
I'm feeling it.
Hey, so why did you, the St. Clair fishery is so good. Why are you not there? Why are you on Erie today?
So the rivers, after we got a horrible rainstorm that last week, and the rivers are actually absolutely brutal. Our river is basically mud. We're still dealing with cold temperatures. We're under 40 degrees. We were actually going to hit the Detroit River, but it seems like the Detroit River is still pretty muddy. So we were able to find some good-looking water over here on Erie, and that's what kind of set us there. We're also going for a derby fish. We do the ultimate walleye derby, so we're trying to catch a big one to put on the scales.
Ah, gotcha. So is there a strategy when you're looking for a smaller number of big fish as opposed to a whole bunch of smaller fish? Do you approach a day on the water differently with that mindset?
Yeah. The big thing for us is if we get 3 bites, we just want them to be 3 good bites. We're not really going for numbers. A lot of the times we're targeting a lot shallower water, a lot of like pre-spawn areas. So like the water we found right now is probably 2 degrees warmer than some of the other water that we found. So we're hoping to find some pre-spawn fish. And we're not looking for a number of bites by any means, but the bites that we get, we want them to be good.
So you're looking for pre-spawn fish because you want a big spawn-filled female yet, right? You're looking for that big fish.
That's it, man. That's it. We're looking for a big pre-spawner that's feeding, that's got eggs, that hopefully will win us some money.
I knew there were huge derbies or tournaments on Lake Erie in the fall. I didn't realize there was a spring contest too.
Yeah, it's actually a really cool event. So my bait store participates. We're one of the weigh-in stations, but it's called the Ultimate Walleye Derby, and it's $100 a ticket, and it pays out 4 weeks. Every week it resets. The winner each week gets $15,000. The grand prize winner gets an additional $15,000, so $30,000 cash. And it's a cool event. It goes from Lake Erie all the way up to Saginaw Bay.
Oh, I didn't
Lake
even
Erie,
know about
Detroit
that.
River. Yeah, man, it's a really cool event. I believe it started last year. So our bait shop's been on board the last 2 years, but this year I get to participate in it. So that's always fun.
Oh, cool. So listen, you mentioned the weather. I can hear the wind blowing in your phone right now. It has been quite the spring, hasn't it?
I don't remember a spring that's been quite this windy, and that was a big thing about coming back to water conditions. It's been so windy and so rainy that we just can't catch a break. I mean, we fished over the weekend for about 5 hours and got a total of 1 bite. And I think one of our spots we could see our trolling motor in.
Wow.
The wind and the rain has been exceptional this spring, and it's just been trying to make the best out of it so far.
How do you control your boat in a river the size of the St. Clair that has the speed, the current that the St. Clair does, and then you throw wind on top of that? That's got to be almost impossible.
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike, and honestly, I think a lot of us, we overthink it. So in a situation where you've got a wind, whether it's a crosswind or it's coming up or down current, the current's always going to be the constant. The current's going to be remaining the same speed. So the best way to control your boat is to simply point your trolling motor in the direction of the wind in which the wind is coming, and then use that wind, whether you're letting it push you back or you're using your trolling motor to motor over top, but you're basically bow into the wind. And that's the easiest way to control it, because the current will keep you on the same pace the whole time.
All right, so let me think about this for a minute. If there was no wind, if it was a flat, calm day, which I can't even remember what that's like anymore, you would put the bow of the boat into the current, but you say when there's a wind, you put the bow into the wind.
Exactly right. Yep. If there's no wind, you want your bow into the current, because the current's going to be the only thing that's pushing you around. As soon as the wind picks up, the current's going to continue to push you the same speed, but the wind is either going to be pushing you into shore, offshore, upstream, downstream. So that's when you point the bow of the boat or wherever the trolling motor is. Some guys jig off the back of the boat.
Yeah.
But you point that trolling motor into the wind and use that.
Gotcha. So how long would it normally take the river, the St. Clair, to clear up and clean up and become more fishable? Is it a couple of day thing? Is it a couple of week process? What, Pete?
No, we're pretty lucky. It takes a lot to get Lake Huron stirred up, and we're fed by Lake Huron. So a lot of the times it's only a 2-3 day process to get that water to fishable water. What we're running into now is with all that rain, all of our tributaries filled up. So even like the Bell River, which our store is on, that little tributary was probably pumping about 5 miles an hour the other day, just debris and mud and everything like that. So what you'll find is, like, in the middle of the river, or sometimes even on the Canadian side of the river, we'll clean up a lot faster. But with Lake Huron feeding us, it usually only takes 2-3 days to make it fishable again.
Do you do much fishing on the Canadian side?
Yes. COVID actually changed that for me, forcing me to fish the American side a lot more. But we do a lot of fishing on the Canadian side, especially they don't have as many homes over there, as many businesses and stuff. So a lot of the times you get a lot more natural shorelines, a lot more natural flats. You'll get rock flats, sand flats. Whereas like on the American side, it's a lot of homes and seawalls and docks. So it seems like that natural shoreline will hold a really good population of fish, especially those, big tree spawn fish.
So it's basically two different fisheries. You've got a natural shoreline as opposed to a more developed side. That's interesting.
Yep, 100%. And the thing is, like, we've got 40 and a half miles of river, but like I would never want to restrict myself to just half of it. So for us, it's always, we buy our Ontario license 3 years at a time, and we do spend quite a bit of time over there because you can find cleaner water over there when you need it. At times you can find dirtier water over there. And again, like you said, sometimes you're fishing two totally different spots.
You mentioned the Bell River that the shop is on. I'm not familiar with that. How big is that? Is that a fishable river, or is that just more of a creek?
It's deep, so like it gets 10 to 15 feet deep. The bottom is all like mud. So you'll get your catfish in there. You get a lot of sucker fish in there. You'll catch like pike and largemouth. We don't typically seem to get like walleye. Don't come up there. We really don't get much of a run of salmon that come up there. I know they'll plant them way up, but we don't really get like a run of salmon. It's more of just kind of like a feeder river.
All right. So as soon as the river clears back up, you're going to be trolling for Atlantics. Walk me through the process. Walk me through your season from what to what to what, Pete.
Yeah, so starting in about, this year we actually had ice. So starting in about March, we'll start going for those resident walleyes, and we'll start salmon trolling. Once that water temp gets up to like between 39 and 42 degrees, it's game on for salmon. And a lot of the times we'll fish those salmon all the way until about the end of April, early May. Around that time, too, around the middle of April, our walleye fishing will start to heat up. But when those salmon are in the river, and they're only in the river for a certain amount of time, so we really like to focus on those Atlantics and cohos.
So the Atlantics are not a resident fish. They're coming and going.
The more we learn about them, they're starting to seem like they're more resident. We've caught Atlantics in July. We've caught Atlantics in September. We've caught Atlantics in November. So as long as there's bait in the river, the Atlantics seem to stick around. The steelhead or your rainbow trout and your cohos, they will leave the system. But if there's bait in the river, we've caught Atlantics, and we've caught them all the way out into Lake St. Clair, where the river dumps into the lake. It's pretty remarkable.
As I was saying it, I'm thinking, boy, because of you have the volume of water, you have so much water because of where you are, you would have a good resident population of many different species of fish.
Yeah, and we do. I mean, really anything that swims in the Great Lakes, we get residency at some point. Earlier this year, when we first got out, there were tons of whitefish in the river, which was really fun to catch those fish and kind of jump on that. And now we're going to see the salmon doing what they do, and there's always walleye in the river. There's always smallmouth in the river. There's always perch in the river. It's a pretty incredible fish.
Any sturgeon fishing out front there, Pete?
The sturgeon fishing, the St. Clair River is a world-class sturgeon fishery, but typically the big number of fish are caught a little bit farther south than us. Once you get down to like Elginak into the north and middle channel, a lot of those fish, they'll come up to spawn. We'll get them all the way up into Marine City, St. Clair to spawn, but the season usually opens around July 15th, July 16th, and by then they make their way downriver and they're just hanging out in those deep holes of the channel.
Gotcha.
But it's incredible fishing.
All right, before I let you go, tell me real quick about your podcast. I love it.
Yeah, man, you guys can find us on YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcast. It's called the Hook One Pod, and we basically we interview guides, we interview industry professionals, we interview locals. We basically just talk fishing. It's a way for us to help our customers kind of cut the learning curve. It's a way for us to go on there and nerd out and talk a lot of fishing, and we cover everything from salmon to walleye to perch. We try and cover it all.
Fish nerds, the best kind of nerds.
You ain't kidding.
Pete, always a pleasure. I'll let you get back to your fishing. I'm shocked that you didn't boat a big fish while we're talking, but as soon as we get done, I know you're going to get some action, so don't let your guard down.
I can feel it, Mike. I appreciate you letting me come on and talk some fishing, buddy, and I hope you have a great season.
You as well. Pete Patsalis, Captain Pete Patsalis of Hook One Charters, the website hookonecharters.com. That's hookonecharters.com. We'll take a break. When we come back, I want to talk with a guy in the DNR. His name is Kevin Frailey. He's been in the DNR forever. He actually is getting ready to retire. But don't tell him I told you that, okay? Talk about education. We don't think about DNR as education very often, but that's been Kevin's bailiwick for many years. We'll talk with him about that. Then we'll wrap up the hour with this week's Ask Avery question. Still, I'm working on a couple things. See, the show is a work in progress. And then hour number 3, we'll talk with Richard P. Smith. I wonder how the UP deer herd is going to do this year. All that and more coming up here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery. You can hear the show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including WHTC in Holland. That's 1450 AM. 99.7 FM. You can hear us in Ludington on News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba, the Riviera of the North, on WCHT 600 AM, 93.5 FM. I've been around the outdoor industry for a long time, but so has our next guest. His name is Kevin Frailey. He's with the DNR, but he was with MUCC, DNR, made a stop along the way. And like I say, he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Kevin, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great, Mike. Good to be with you today.
Always a pleasure. So you got quite a career going. Tell me what you've concentrated on. Obviously, it's been outdoor related, but break it down a little more specific, Kevin.
Well, my original education and early experience was a forester, a die-in-the-wool, tree counting, field dude, data forester. But I always say I saw the light when I volunteered to do education programs when I worked back for the Florida Division of Forestry, and I was just enthralled by making a difference and moving the needle by getting people to understand more about our natural resources, and that seemed like a better idea than counting trees. So I did a total career shift, and I've been involved in environmental, outdoor ed, natural resources education, all that type of thing for the last 40 years now.
Do you feel like, and this is kind of a loaded question or maybe a leading question, do you feel like education about the outdoors, our history, tradition, natural resources, wildlife, fishing, wildlife issues, is it more important these days than it ever has been?
Oh, absolutely. Because as you know, we've lost touch with the outdoors, right? So There was a time in our country which was more rural when everybody hunted, fished, gardened. We didn't need that type of education back in the day because people saw the food chain live in person while they were outside. And statistically now, the great outdoors has gone indoors, and everyone spends, not just kids, we always like to blame kids, but all of us are in, Netflix. We've been taken over by the screen.
Yeah.
So it's harder and harder now to get people back outside.
Well, you talk about moving the needle. I was looking at the information you sent me the other day. The DNR is actually involved in more education projects and programs than I was aware of.
Yeah, we've been pretty fortunate since I've been there, I'm in year 19 now. We've had really good support. I think this is the fourth director I've worked for. Really good support, realizing that I like to tease our professionals, the fish, wildlife biologists, the foresters, even the conservation officers, because everybody in the public that listens to you always think that's the DNR and that's the really important work. And it is the important work, except a lot of those folks don't know how to tell the story. They were PhDs or, statistically, again, most people in the natural resources field are not gregarious. They're not extroverts. And so you run into a bunch of education and communication people, which is the realm I'm in, and it's just the opposite. So we love telling the story of the department and what we do and try to translate that to the public.
Well, I think that's pretty cool. Like you talk about the game wardens. I love the game wardens. A lot of my friends are game wardens, but they're the ones who are really good at it are also educators because they realize, okay, their interaction with the public affects how people see the DNR in general. So for you to be in education and get that word out and to do it for so many years, I think it's pretty cool, Kevin. And can I say that I hear there's an impending retirement coming for you?
Possibly, yeah. No, I'm actually thinking of, I don't know I'm not sure what I hang up. It's not like I hang up my, diameter tape if I was a forester or, I'm hanging up my, I don't know, textbook doesn't sound right either. But, yes, I think we're looking at the fall, perhaps October, finally going to set sail on something new and let somebody else run this shop.
Well, congrats on that. But I would bet that you're never going to be too far from the outdoors or telling people about the outdoors or teaching people about the outdoors.
No, you're right. It's kind of in my blood. Like I said earlier, once you, I kind of got bit by this bug years ago, and when I was more of a forester and doing field work, then all of a sudden I learned that you can do other stuff with the public, and they'll actually listen to you, and they like you telling them about the outdoors. You know, that's a mission I think that's important for the department. There's a lot of nature centers and zoos and other groups of people that do a great job of talking to people about wildlife and animals and plants. But what they don't do, Mike, nobody tells the story of how we manage those things. And in our world, modern world, those species have to be managed. And nobody tells that story because that's not their job. But when you work for the Department of Natural Resources and you're basically mandated that these are the public's resources, it's our job to tell people how we do manage those.
And I'm so glad that for so many years, Kevin Frailey, you have done that. Congrats on all the hard work. Good luck on the on your future. Thank you for everything you've done, Kevin Frailey, DNR. The website for the Michigan DNR is michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll wrap up the second hour with this week's Ask Avery segment right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Manistee, WMLQ 97.7 FM. You can hear us in Port Huron, the other side of the state, WPHM 1380 AM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Manistee, WTIQ 1490 AM 95.3 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good folks at Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. Security Credit Union continues to grow. In fact, they're putting a new office in the middle part of the state in Midland coming up, I think, in June. Also, Security Credit Union, a big part of the second annual Mike Avery Outdoors charity golf outing. They have stepped up and really made a very generous contribution for that event. The money raised for that will go to MUCC's youth camp. You can sign up for the golf outing, which, by the way, is Friday, July 25th at the West Branch Country Club in beautiful West Branch in beautiful Ogemaw County. Go to the website mucc.org/golf, and you can sign up for that event. The way the Ask Avery segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can pose a question that you would like me to answer directly or pass along to somebody else, somebody far more knowledgeable than me, which actually wouldn't be very hard to find somebody far more knowledgeable than me, especially with the question this week. And this came up. I can't believe this even came up. It came up in the Behind the Mic live stream segment I was doing here in the studio. And somebody, I think it was Paul Hudak, posted a question. He says, hey, Mike, I can't believe I'm even saying it. Hey, Mike, did you hear about this company that has, I'm going to use the term resurrected, it's not the right term, has resurrected the dire wolf? Now, I'm like, dire wolf? What's a dire wolf? Oh, okay, I think I heard of a dire wolf in that Game of Thrones TV show. Well, and I said in my pompous bravado, I said, there's no way that they have brought back the dire wolf. In fact, if they brought back the dire wolf, I'm going to see a woolly mammoth by my truck in the parking lot when I get out of the studio. And then the comments came in and the emails came in. And apparently, and John Dent, who was in the studio with me, who was on WSTW, verified this, John, because you guys were talking about it, right? That there's this company in Texas or somewhere that they have spliced together from some genes or something they found in the ice or somewhere, and they actually have brought back the dire wolf. What? But they didn't bring back the woolly mammoth, right, John? Okay, they did not. Whew. This is just what we need, a dire wolf. I'm still dealing with the concept of coy wolves and trying to explain why that is a dangerous road to go down. Shall we talk about that again? I will very briefly, all right? The last time I checked with biologists and scientists, and it's been a few months now, there was no technical scientific term for this animal called the coy wolf. And supposedly, the coy wolf is a critter that is made when a coyote and a wolf interbreed. So there is no scientific term for this. However, PBS and this show Nature, or whatever it is, did this big special on the coy wolf and why it's scientifically important. I'm going to say, or I am saying right now, that for those of us here in our state of Michigan who are predator hunters or who are interested in the political side of wildlife management, but I hate to go there, right? Because there should not be a political side. It should be sound scientific wildlife management practices only. But I'm saying, please stop using the term coy wolf. If there is no scientific designation for a coy wolf, a wolf-coyote crossbreed, why is that important? I'll tell you why it's important. Because if we keep talking about the coy wolf, the coy wolf, the coy wolf, and it becomes accepted as public jargon, I think it jeopardizes our predator hunting here in Michigan in general. Because if the antis get a hold of this, and I hate to even be talking about this, if the antis get a hold of this concept, oh, there's wolf DNA in coyotes? Well, we don't allow wolf hunting, so we need to stop all coyote hunting as well. So whether you buy into the concept of a coy wolf or not, stop talking about it. The antis are going to grab that, and I'm telling you right now, you might say, Avery, you're crazy, and I probably am, but every once in a while I'm right, and I'm going to be right on this one. If they grab onto the coy wolf concept, they will fight very hard and throw a bunch of money at all predator hunting, and predator hunting already is on the hot seat. So how we got to that from the topic of this week's Ask Avery segment, I'm not sure how it's possible. But I can tell you this. I want to publicly thank the folks at Security Credit Union for being so generous and so eager to support the second annual Mike Avery Outdoors charity golf outing to benefit MUCC's youth camp. When the folks at Security Credit Union found out what this was for, to get kids in the outdoors, they said, we are in. And they're writing a pretty big check to support it, too. So thank you for that. SecurityCU.org. SecurityCU.org is the website. All right, we'll take a break here for the top of the hour. When we come back in our third hour, a guy who also makes a lot of comments that gets attention, gets people looking his direction. Richard P. Smith, noted outdoor writer, and check this. He's the most recent, or one of the most recent inductees into the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame. How cool is that?
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Man, that's an impressive list of partners, isn't it? I am so blessed to be able to work with so many great, primarily Michigan-based companies. This is a Michigan show. I've had people say, well, it's a decent show, but it's all about Michigan. And these, people from outside of Michigan. Yeah, it is all about Michigan. This is a Michigan-based radio show broadcast on Michigan radio stations. I am a Michigan guy. The audience is primarily Michigan. We talk about Michigan topics. Now, does there get some interest outside of our state as far as the podcast version? Absolutely. You can hear the podcast anywhere, and people do listen to the show all across the country and all across the world. But we talk about Michigan-based topics because that's what, there are so many people who are interested in our state who don't live in our state. They used to live here. They recreate here. They vacation here. So there's a strong interest in what we're doing here in Michigan. But again, I'm a Michigan guy. I made my career here in Michigan, and I'm very, very proud of that. I'm also very proud of the fact that I've been able to work with so many great people over the years, people I've learned from. You know, the big names. I mean, I'm not saying I was friends with Morton F. or Fred Bear, but I knew them. I rubbed shoulders with them. I was able to talk with them and spend some time with them. I mean, and those are people that are like in the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame. I've also spent a lot of time talking with and learned an awful lot from Richard P. Smith. When I first started bear hunting, Richard was my go-to guy. I mean, I didn't know anything about bear hunting. So I'd talk to Richard, I'd interview Richard, I'd send Richard emails, and he helped me out tremendously. First bear I ever saw was I was standing behind Richard P. Smith. It was at a dump in the UP that we were up there for a Michigan Outdoor Writers Conference. I'd never seen a bear before. Richard took me and my mentor, Pete Jonas, out to the dump, and he said, let's go see some bears. I can show you some bears. And this big old male black bear came wandering up out of the swamp. We stood there. I was scared to death. Richard said, you're fine. He's fine. He's not here to hurt you. I was terrified. I'd never seen a bear before. I'm ready to head to the truck. Richard's like, no, it's cool. It's good. So Richard's been around the outdoor scene even longer than I have. And I just got an email from him the other day that makes me so very happy and so proud for Richard. He said, hey, Mike, guess what? I'm being inducted into the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame. In our world, there is no bigger honor. I am so happy for Richard and so proud of Richard. And he's on the Outdoor Magazine phone line right now. Richard, welcome back to the show. Holy cow, congratulations.
Thank you very much. That's a holy cow moment for me, too, when I found out about it. It's amazing to be considered in the special group of Michigan outdoorsmen that are currently in the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame. To be considered among them is just mind-blowing for me.
How did you find out about it?
I got an email and then a phone call from the president of Michigan Outdoor Writers Association, Bob Vogel, and he let me know about it. I knew Tom Lounsbury nominated me for the honor, and I was pleased that he was willing to do that, but I was still surprised when I found out that I made it.
So how does this process work? When you get nominated, are you told then or not necessarily?
No. Lounsbury told me that he was nominating me. I don't know that that's a necessary thing, but he did so to make sure it was okay. And I said, that's fine. I don't have a problem
that's
with that.
Okay. Sure, I don't mind.
But then there's a committee that looks at all the nominees and makes a decision. I don't know how many people were nominated. Retired DNR wildlife biologist Al Stewart is also being inducted this year into the Outdoor Hall of Fame for Michigan.
Yeah.
It's well-deserved, certainly, for Al.
Yeah, I saw that too. Very, very, very cool. Again, I'm so happy for you, Richard. I mean, it kind of puts an exclamation point on a career that's been a very long career here, but you've done so much in our state. Again, congrats.
Thanks a lot. Michigan deer hunters posted something about the honor on their Facebook page, and there was over 300 comments, and it was just mind-boggling to read the comments. It made me feel really good. To see all the positive comments, and it's terrific.
And if I remember right now, the new home of the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame is the Weber Center at Jay's in Clair.
That's correct, yes.
So is there an induction ceremony that you're coming down for, or what?
Well, the next MOA meeting is in May in Gaylord, and I'm not sure, I haven't heard if there's going to be an induction then in conjunction with the meeting or at a different time. There's quite a distance between Gaylord and Clair, so I'm not sure how that's going to work.
Well, I bet you're going to be there when they do it, though, right? Whatever it is, you'll be able to get down here.
I plan on it.
Excellent. All right. Again, so I'm really, really happy for you, Richard. I think that's absolutely wonderful. So let's talk about some issues at hand here. Well, first of all, when you look out the window at your place there in Marquette, does it feel like spring, or what's it look like right now?
It feels like winter right now. It has most of April so far. We've had some warm spells in between. Fortunately, we've actually lost most of our snow cover a couple different times. But then we've had some cold fronts and more snow move in. We had a major storm on March 5th, and then in April we got hammered again with another major snowfall.
My buddy Johnny Bowler, the Bear Whisperer over in Seney, says he's plowed more than 300 inches of snow, and that was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that northeastern part of the UP has gotten a tremendous amount of snow this winter, and the Keweenaw, the northwest. Both of those areas typically get lots of snow. In Marquette here, we're behind normal for snowfall for some reason. But the fact that we've had a couple of meltdowns that we lost most of the snow has been beneficial for the deer.
Well, that's where I was leading with this. I mean, that's always the concern, a late winter and the UP deer herd. So not time to ring the alarm bells?
For the Keweenaw and the northeast upper peninsula, possibly, because it's going to take a while to melt the snow again. And I don't know that the snow melted all the way in those two areas during those warm spells we had. But it certainly had to benefit the deer. But there's still plenty of snow left in those areas. We're supposed to be in the 50s later this week or this weekend when this show airs. That's going to be a big help.
So is the concern late in the winter like this, if you've got a lot of snow, is the mobility of the deer, or there's just no food left for them?
Well, both. And it makes them more susceptible to predation with the deep snow that's crusted now that remains.
Gotcha. All right, Richard, let's look ahead here a little bit. So I would say probably this next couple of weeks are going to be, I don't want to say critical, but it's what happens there is going to make an impact, or it's going to be decided in the next couple of weeks, right?
Definitely. We don't want this to extend past mid-April. We hopefully will have, with this warmer weather that's coming, get rid of most of the snow by mid-April, I hope.
Have you turkey hunted in the snow before?
I have. When I was turkey hunting, we had some April snowfall during one hunt in particular. I remember one member of our group managed to get a bird. I can't recall if I did or not.
I know I have hunted when it was snowing, but I don't think I've turkey hunted when there was actually snow on the ground.
Yeah, there was snow on the ground this spring that I recall.
Richard, hang tight. We've got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. You've joined me enough to know how this works. We've got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more with Richard P. Smith. By the way, his website is richardpsmith.com. That's richardpsmith.com. When Richard sent me that email, he said, and he was very humble. He said, I cannot believe that I am being inducted into this group that includes so many great Michigan outdoor legends. Well, I'd say I'd put Richard right there with him. I was telling the story about the first time I ever saw a bear. Richard P. Smith was basically my guide. If you go back to Moose Lift 1 and 2, when we were standing there at Pashiki Grade, west of Marquette, when they released the moose, Richard was standing right there. I mean, his career goes back longer than mine does. He's got a lot of books. He's got a lot of videos. He's got a lot of articles. The guy is just a wealth of information, and the fact that he is now being honored as an inductee into the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame, I think is very cool. I think it's really cool that I get to call him my friend, and now he's being honored like this. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Muskegon on WKBZ. That's 1090 AM. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC, 660 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM, 580 AM. Talking now with noted outdoor writer Richard P. Smith. Been around the outdoor scene here in Michigan for a long, long time. Just found out he's being inducted into the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame. How very, very cool is that? Richard, I know your career is far from over, but when you get a milestone like this, it does make sense to kind of look back a little bit. When you look back at all the different things you've done, is there anything that stands out? What stands out? What are you most proud of? What got the most attention?
Probably photographing a grizzly bear attack in Montana. I'm one of the few, if not the only person, to photograph a grizzly bear attack. I was at a Outdoor Writers Association of America conference in Montana when a problem grizzly was being relocated into the Bob Marshall Wilderness area. And Tom Hugler was originally invited to go photograph this release, but he was a board member of OWAA at the time, and he couldn't get away. So he suggested me to go along, which I'm very grateful for. And we expected it to be a normal release. They'd open the cage, the bear would run off, and we'd take some few photos, and that would be it. Unfortunately, the bear was transported in the bed of a pickup truck in an aluminum live trap, and that live trap was not secured in the back of the pickup truck. When the bear was released from the trap, the game warden was standing on top of the trap, and he hollered "go" to the driver of the pickup truck to drive off. Well, his voice attracted the attention of the grizzly, and it was very upset, having been drugged all miles into the wilderness, and he grabbed that trap, pulled it out of the truck with the warden on top of it, and the bear grabbed the warden by a leg. Fortunately, the warden had a .357 Magnum handgun, and he used that to kill the bear. But the bear broke his leg. And I got a series of photos showing what happened.
Yeah, you got this whole thing on film, right?
Yes. And you mentioned the moose release earlier.
Yeah.
I covered that thoroughly. And one of the things that happened during that moose release in 1987 helped make it possible for me to get those grizzly attack photos. One of the cow moose that was released was in a bad mood, and it attacked a game warden, a conservation officer that was standing trying to control the crowd, and she used her front legs to kick at him and broke a video camera that he was holding. Fortunately, it didn't hurt the conservation officer. But I was so shocked at what happened, I stood there with my mouth open and didn't take any photos. Because of my lack of getting photos, then I mentally prepared myself for photographing whatever happened, and that's why I got that series of photos of the grizzly bear attack.
I see what you're saying, though, because that would be so easy just to sit there and watch that and go, oh, my gosh, I can't believe this is happening right here in front of me.
Yeah, exactly. And I should have got some photos of it, but I didn't. Buck Levasseur, who was there, he did get some video of it.
And then, if I remember right, then the pictures that you shot, though, I don't want to say you lost control of them, but man, a lot of people eventually use those who did not have your permission.
Exactly. What happened is the age of digital photos was new at the time. I shot a slide film of what happened. I had digital images made from those slides. And Field and Stream magazine bought that series of photos to put on their website. And what I failed to do is put my copyright on those images before sending them to Field and Stream. I assumed they were going to do that, but they didn't. Because my copyright was not on those photos, a lot of people copied those photos from Field and Stream's website.
And then, so did you have any recourse? I mean, that's your intellectual property, yet people across the country, if not the world, are using it. Was there anything you could do about it?
Yeah, I contacted every source that I could find that used the photos illegally, and I requested payment for use of the photos, and I did get payment from some of them, but the others took the photos down per my request.
Okay.
Because they were used without my permission.
Now
but it was a lot of extra time and effort to do that.
I can't even imagine. You mentioned Field and Stream, and I'm thinking of Outdoor Life. Forgive my ignorance. Are those magazines even around anymore?
Digitally. They're,
digitally.
Outdoor Life and Field and Stream are online only.
So the world of outdoor communication has certainly changed since you started.
Yes, and that's one of the things I've been thinking about since I got this honor, Mike. There are very few people in Michigan today that make a living communicating about the outdoors. You are one of them. I'm one of them. Kristen Ojanimi, who does discovering for TV6. There are very few of us. When I started, and when you started, most major newspapers in Michigan had full-time outdoor writers and major outdoor pages. That's no longer the case, which is sad, very sad.
Yeah, you were actually kind of reading my mind, because my question for you was going to be, could a young somebody coming up these days do what you did?
Not full-time. They'd have to have another source of income.
Yeah.
It took years for me to build where I'm at today, and the same for you. It's be a lot tougher today. And one of the things that I was thinking about, and I saw a quote from singer Amy Grant that's apropos. She said that nobody accomplishes anything big by themselves, and that's true in my case as well. My wife, Lucy, deserves a tremendous amount of credit for me being as successful as I am. I had mentors. Ken Lowe was the previous editor of the Mining Journal in Marquette. He helped me get started as a writer, and then he went on to be an editor of Michigan Outdoors magazine. Dave Ritchie was one of my mentors. Tom Hugler and I spent a lot of time together and learned from each other. So I've had a lot of help, a lot of mentors that have got me to where I am today.
Sure, and I certainly appreciate that, because I've had my share as well, including Pete Jonas that I talked about earlier. You know Pete very well.
Yeah,
I mean the guy opened so many doors for me, and I have so. I owe him so much. He's no longer with us, but I had a chance to tell him these things before he passed away. But I would suspect, though, Richard, that now it's in the ball's in the other court. I would suspect that young writers have come to you over the years and say, "Hey, Richard, how do I do this?"
Mm-hmm. Some have, yes, but like we discussed earlier, the opportunities are far less.
Yeah.
There are far fewer outdoor publications to contribute to today than when I started. It makes it more difficult. And with newspapers not having staff outdoor writers, the opportunities there are very limited.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think if a young person coming up these days and wants to try to make a living in the outdoors, which it can be done. I mean, there is a way to do it. Maybe not as easy as it used to be, but I think they're looking at a YouTube channel, social media stuff, a podcast, all that kind of stuff. Outdoor television, I think, is not what it used to be. Some people, some big names are still making a living there, but the average video producer, it's, I got out of it because it wasn't there anymore. It wasn't what it used to be. But I guess you got to, hey, listen, to be as successful as long as you got to be tenacious, and you got to kind of roll with things.
diversify.
Yeah.
Contribute to as many publications as possible. Do speaking engagements, sell photographs, sell books. It all helps and makes it possible.
Well, you certainly. How many books have you written now, Richard?
32. And I'm working on 33.
What's 33 going to be about?
Book 9 of Great Michigan Deer Tales.
Well, I go back to your bear hunting books. Those are my go-to reference when I have a question or I want to refresh my memory or something. Those are what I go to. If you had to pick a favorite, well, I'm going to go back here. Remember when I had the old TV show? Oftentimes, you would do, I won't call them cameo, guest appearances, guest hunts where you'd go up into Canada and hunt these monster bucks. Are you still doing that type of thing, Richard?
No, not in recent years. I think 2012 was the last time I hunted in Canada, and I miss it. But it became expensive and difficult to manage.
Yeah. Now, you also said, I think you said you're not turkey hunting anymore either, huh?
Right. Just too many other things going on in the spring.
I understand that. But I do think, didn't you get the Michigan Grand Slam?
Yeah, I was the second person in the state to accomplish that. And I had the bear, deer, and elk. And the elk and bear can be tough, but elk is certainly the hardest. Then the turkey was the last thing I got.
Yeah. I know there was a lot of skill involved, but you had to have some luck involved to get the right tags, too.
Exactly. And once even when you do an elk tag, there's no guarantee that you would get a bull with antlers large enough to qualify for state record.
Well, that's where the skill comes in. I mean, and the patience, right? You had the patience to wait and make sure you were after the right animal.
Yeah, I did pass up a number of bulls.
There you go.
During that hunt.
Richard, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, especially this week on the with the word that you are being inducted into the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame. I think, again, in our world, I don't think there is any bigger award. And so I'm very, very happy for you, and I congratulate you once again.
Thanks again, Mike. I appreciate it, and I agree. I don't think there is any higher honor in the state.
Exactly. Richard P. Smith, noted outdoor writer, author, videographer, photographer, and now recent inductee, or soon to be inducted, into the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame. How cool is that? RichardPSmith.com is the website, RichardPSmith.com. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on more than 30 stations across this great state of Michigan, including WSGW AM and FM, that's 790 AM, 100.5 FM. In Saginaw, I'm in the studios of WSGW here right now. Here with young Jonathan Dent. We were just talking Art Lewis, who was a broadcast icon, a member of the Michigan Michigan Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. See, I'm surrounded by greatness, right? I was talking with Richard P. Smith, now in the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame. Art Lewis from WSGW walked in, a member of the Michigan Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame, sitting here with a future Hall of Famer. Right, John? Jonathan Dent. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. John is a big help. Charlie just popped his head in here, too. Sometimes people will say, Avery, say hi to your staff for me or whatever. I don't have a staff. Okay. There is no staff. I am the guy. But when I come into the studio here, the radio studio, I work very closely with Charlie and John. And I couldn't do this without their help. So, Jonathan, I appreciate it very much. And when you get a few more years under your belt, you will have people in the parking lot like Charlie does, but not quite yet, okay? This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let them create an outdoor getaway in your backyard. Now, I realize it's been kind of cold. Weather's been kind of, crappy. And so maybe you're not really thinking that direction yet. But you know what? When it breaks, it's going to break hard and fast, and it's going to be game on. And you're going to wish you would have talked to the folks at Reader to get your spring cleanup all scheduled, to get your water features, your sprinkler systems opened. And if you have a project, a landscape project for this summer, do not wait any longer. Because I can tell you right now, the folks at Reader are getting backed up. There's a lot of demand for their services because they do such a great job. This year at the Avery house, for the first time in many years, there is no big landscape project. We pretty much got them done. Now, I know that's the kiss of death to say we've got it done because there will be another project as soon as one is done. In fact, right now I'm working on a project in the house, but that's a different topic. Oh, so yeah, the weather has been kind of, that's kind of on everybody's mind still, I think, right? After the big ice storm here in the northern lower, UP still feels like it's wintertime. At least across much of the UP. Down where I am, there's no snow on the ground, but it's just very, very cold and windy. Windy. A lot of my friends have been trying to get out on Saginaw Bay. They say, we just can't get out there. It's just blowing too hard. Saginaw River is kind of blown out with high water levels and mud and dirt coming down from the rains. So Mother Nature can make it a little bit challenging, but you know what? You still got to deal with it. Just deal with the conditions and adapt and make it happen. Personally, I have not been out fishing yet, but I am looking forward to turkey season. And it's hard to believe, but turkey season starts next weekend. And I don't know why this turkey season snuck up on me. Again, I think it's maybe because of the weather or whatever, or other things going on, but it seems like it's here a little early this year. But I'm excited. Going to be out there with my grandson, Trent. He did end up using, or he will end up using, my Mossberg 835 Ultimag. I was telling you last week that he has a very cool Remington 1187 given to him by his grandpa on the other side. I didn't even know he had it, but he says, yeah, I got this gun, which is beautiful. It's like a family heirloom, and he went out and patterned that, and it just wasn't patterning well. I said, look if you want to use that gun, I support you and I completely understand. But if you want to use my Mossberg 835 Ultimag that has a turkey choke and fiber optic sights on it, you're more than welcome to. So he said, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. So last weekend, we actually made a trip up to Jay's to Clair. I took two of my grandsons with me, Carter and Trent. Carter was looking for trap loads for his high school trap shooting team, so we bought a flat of those. And Trent was looking for turkey loads. He was looking for turkey loads to pattern and to use while hunting. Well, once we looked at the price of some of the turkey loads, I said, look, why don't you go ahead and pattern it with the cheaper loads and hunt with the more expensive loads? And I talked to the guys at Jay's. I said, look, is there going to be a big difference here in the pattern? And they said, no, we like yes, there will be. But for patterning, yes, you can use the more inexpensive shells. So that's what he did. And he's getting a pretty good pattern on that thing now. Not what I would have expected, maybe out to 40 yards. I hear people killing birds at 60 yards with a good pattern. It would make me nervous to want to do that anyway. I think 40 is a very respectable poke. I've never come close to killing a bird that far out. Usually much, much closer, half the distance or less. But I'm excited about that. Looking forward to that. What else is going on? Wednesday Night Live at the Lumberjack Restaurant coming up real quick now on the 23rd. I don't know if there are seats available. It's worth a try. I'd love to have you join us. Call 989-343-0892 for reservations, 989-343-0892. If nobody answers, leave your name, your phone number, how many in your party. Really looking forward to seeing you there. Also, as we look at the summer months, put on your calendar now, Friday, July 25th for the second annual Mike Avery Outdoors Charity Golf Outing at the beautiful West Branch Country Club in beautiful West Branch. It's to benefit MUCC's Youth Camp. Go to the website mucc.org/golf, and you can sign up there. I've already signed up one foursome, the foursome that I'm playing in. I'm signing up another foursome. We're collecting golfers. Going to be a great time. We will sell out. So if you're interested, mucc.org/golf. Take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Dave has to finish a story he started last week, plus a recipe if there's time. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's the best way to get in touch with me. A lot of people send me messages using the social media messaging platforms. Please send me an email, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Well, in looking at the rundown this week, talking with a lot of very, very knowledgeable outdoor people who are true icons, including this last piece with Richard P. Smith now in the Michigan Outdoor Hall of Fame. If there was a Hall of Fame for wild game chefs, Dixie Dave Minar would be a lock. He'd be a unanimous shoo-in. He'd be the man. Last week, Dave was telling us a little bit about how he got to where he is today. We actually ran out of time. So I've asked Dave to finish that story, and if there's time, we'll do a recipe this week, and he's with us on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. David, welcome back.
How's it going, Michael? I'm just fine and dandy myself.
I'm doing just great. Last we were talking, you were telling the story about how you were a private chef on a big private yacht down in the Keys or the Caribbean. How did you end up in Birch Run at the old Dixie Inn?
I grew up in Clio, and I remember as a kid, the lady that used to own Oscar and Joey's Roadhouse was called Chandler's, and they had great fish and chips. And so once in a while, we would go for fish and chips, the whole family. And then I don't know, it's just hard to say how things transferred. But anyways, ended up buying the restaurant, and Terry, my wife, and my mother-in-law, Beatrice, they came with the building.
They came with the building. How long then? Yeah. How long was that building a restaurant under your direction?
35 years.
35 years.
It was a glorious 35. I would have never got into the wild game end of it so much had you not prompted me, and we went on TV since I think we did our first show in '89, the Christmas show, 1989.
Okay.
Yeah, you think that's about right?
Probably about right. Yeah, I bet it was about right. And then a couple years ago, you sold the restaurant there, but you're not out of cooking now. You're back in the kitchen.
Right. I worked for a gentleman in Standish. I've been cooking there since November. And 3 days a week. I just got so bored after being under the scrutiny, of 35 years, and then all of a sudden nothing. It was kind of a depressing thing. So I took a part-time job, and it's just been wonderful. We've been doing a lot of wild game specials and snapper and walleye and fish dishes too. And the people have been coming all the way from Clio and Flint and Birch Run up to see me there on the weekend. So if you're ever in the restaurant and you're from another town other than Standish, we used to eat at the restaurant, Oscar and Joey's, let me know and I'll come out and say hi.
Excellent. Well, I've had several friends that have come in and tried the restaurant, and of course they know you're cooking. They said it was a wonderful experience. You said something, Dave, that got my attention. About being in the kitchen, being under the gun. I've got to believe, and from seeing you in the kitchen at some of these big events like Wednesday Night Live or the big church charity events, it is a very stressful environment. There's not a lot of people just standing around with their hands folded. I mean, it's a rock and roll, high stress, we got to get this done now environment.
Oh, yeah. Yep. You're absolutely right. You're doing dinners for 300 or plus people other than that. You better have your act all together. Yeah. And you're right. People are running around getting everything all together. And then when the meal is served, then it's time to relax.
I've asked you this before, but you take one of your signature dishes like walleye New Orleans or whatever it is, right? You cook that for one or two people, and then you do a big event, and they say, "Hey, we want that signature dish." So you're now cooking for hundreds of people. How do you make that transition? Do you just multiply the recipe times X amount, or
not really?
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
Not really. You have an idea. People are going to say on a buffet line, when you have fish and wild game and then the side dishes, you have to realize that people are going to take a smaller portion other than the 6 or 8 ounce portion that you're serving them in a dining establishment. And so you don't really times a dinner by 300. You have to figure how many pans, and after having the knowledge of how many people will eat from that pan, you can make so many pans worth and then have a little bit left over for a buffer zone or seconds. So it's time and error will let you get to that.
Yeah.
Other chefs do the same thing.
Yep, it's just a matter of experience and doing it over and over for years and years, like you, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, have done. How about a recipe for us next week, David?
Okay, we're going to go back to fish and seafood, I guess, for a while.
Perfect. Fish. Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Then I'd like to do some small stream trout recipes too. I got a bunch of them in the cookbook.
I tell you what, that's coming up. You feel free to do that next week. Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar says he's going to have a small stream trout recipe for us next week, because that opener comes up in a couple of weeks now too. Things are starting to rock, right? Turkey season coming up, trout season opening up. If Mother Nature ever cooperates, it'll be morel season. Lots going on here in our great state of Michigan. My name is Mike Avery. This is Outdoor Magazine. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. The email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com.